And we have Dan Edds here with us today, who's joined us, and he's come back this is the second time. And Dan Edds is a management consultant who helps organizations develop high impact cultures. And then we're also here, right next to him, is another Dan. This is going to be fun. Dan Torres, and I think we're maybe calling him Denzo. And Dan Torres is an experienced and adept in product management with over 30 years of ongoing hands-on practice in the tech industry. And process-wise, we're going to refer to Dan Tarker as Tarker, Dan Edds as Edds, and Dan Torres. Is it Denzo? Do you want to be as Denzo?
Either way, whatever causes more chaos or confusion.
Yes, exactly.
We're all about chaos and confusion on this show. So we are going to start off with a quiz, right, Jodah? You got a quiz that you're going to...
We are. You
are you guys ready to take a vision quiz?
I wasn't told this was going to be on the test, but okay.
Yeah, well, it's a pop quiz.
Yes, it is.
Does that bring you back into the schoolroom and getting a little nervous there, Torres?
I'm getting very nervous.
Oh, this is. If you guys fail, nothing happens except that we just drop you from the show. So it's no big deal.
No big deal.
It's like, boom, you're gone.
There's 4 questions, and each one is basically a vision statement. And then we're going to name off 4 companies that potentially have that vision statement, and we want to know if you guys can kind of figure out who that vision statement aligns with. All right. And Dan, why don't you kick off the first one? Huh?
All right, I will kick it off. To be the most creative organization in the world, is it BBC, Apple, Google, or Nike?
I'll take A for 200.
You'll take A for B. You'll take the BBC. You win, Torres. That is the answer. And I'm not. I would have thought Nike. Actually, I'm not Nike. I would have thought Apple personally, but BBC wants to be the most creative organization in the world. Apparently.
So what? If I could ask, why did you pick the BBC?
Why did I? Two reasons. One is I know Apple's and I know Google's, and there wasn't. And then Nike, it sort of doesn't fit.
Yeah.
No pun intended. What you're doing. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, Dan, Mr. Denzo has worked for both companies. Is currently working at Google, right? Correct.
And we regularly know what our vision is.
You know your vision is like, oh,
that's right. That was part of the answers. Okay.
All right. Number 2. Vision statement: to create a better everyday life for the many people. The options are Novartis, Unilever, IKEA, or Tom's.
That sort of sounds like Unilever, but I don't even know why.
Unilever?
You want to go with Unilever?
Yeah, that just sounds like Unilever, but again, I don't know why.
Yeah, I guess out of those, I'd probably pick Unilever as well. So if I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to go all the way with Edds.
Let's do it then. All right. Sorry, guys.
You're about to disappear from the show.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long, short episode. It is IKEA.
There's 2 of us. You'll have nobody to talk to.
What was it, Dan, again? Tarker, what was it? It was IKEA.
IKEA? Yeah,
that's right.
That does sound like IKEA. Yep.
I should have got it with the grammar. That's why.
Right. They didn't translate to English very well. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Yep. All right. Next.
All right, so number 3, moving on. People working together as a lean global enterprise to make people's lives better through automotive and mobility leadership. The 4 choices are Toyota, Tesla, Honda, or Ford.
I will at least throw out my 2 process of elimination. So I will throw out Tesla and I guess Ford. That doesn't fit. And I believe it's a Japanese company that actually has lean as part of their process. And I can't remember if it was Toyota or Honda.
Yeah.
So which one?
Lean would be very much identified with Toyota. It sounds to me like Tesla, though.
Agreeing on Tesla or Toyota?
Tesla was be soul crushing to your people who work for you.
At any expense. All right. So are we thinking Toyota or Tesla?
I'll go with Tesla just to provide discussion.
All right. Dan, what was it?
All right. Torres, do you agree with Tesla or are you going to go with something else?
No, I'm leaning in to Toyota.
Okay, wait,
Leaning
tell me
into
your guess.
Toyota. I am afraid you are both wrong. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah,
It is Ford, actually. It's Ford.
What?
yeah, surprise.
These are the cars of men who live for action and excitement. The Starliner and Sunliner by Ford.
That's
So that bottle of wine we were going to send you for winning
Oh,
this.
so read that
It's
once
gonna-
again. What's
I
their
think I'm
vision
going to drink it
statement?
myself.
I'm already drinking it, Dan. What are you talking about?
So what was their vision statement again?
The Ford vision statement. Again, the Ford vision statement again was people working together as a lean global enterprise to make people's lives better through automotive and mobility leadership.
No, you're not thinking. Are they stretching it?
That's a. I'll refrain comment.
All right.
Yeah,
So
love
one
to hear
thing I'm getting here is we're seeing that some organizations, at least for those of us standing outside of the organization, that they might not be achieving their vision.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, which is bringing us to the last one. Is this
Yep.
yours, Jodah, or is it mine?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. So, quote, here is the vision statement. To provide the best customer service possible, period. Deliver wow through service. That is the vision statement. The 4 possible companies will be Ritz-Carlton, Zappos, Southwest Airlines, and Amazon. I try to say that like a
Amazon
1980s
delivering
TV
the
show.
wow through service.
Yeah, absolutely. Comes daily. I get it daily.
So, my top two choices, one would be Ritz and the other one would be Southwest Airlines. Just the language sounds like Southwest Airlines.
it's just weird in terms of like a vision statement, but
Yeah, right?
it's sort of not lofty per se. It's sort of very tactical in some respects. So
That's true.
but the language, yeah, fits with like the brand of like Southwest. Doesn't fit with Ritz Carlton. So I agree with my friend Dan.
What about Zappos?
Theirs is to tread on people.
All right. We're going to get sued after this
That was
episode.
their other one. To tread.
I hope none of these companies are associated with YouTube. They're going to like put the thumb on the algorithm and crash this episode.
Dan, let them know what it is. Let them know what they want.
Zappos.
It is Zappos.
It is Zappos.
Yes.
So as
unfortunately,
we
will
can
not-
see
yeah.
through this clever quiz that Jodah developed, a lot of organizations, we have our understanding of the organization and how they operate. We see their vision statement, and there's seems to be a little bit of a misalignment between the two. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about how we can develop effective vision statements that speak to leadership, speak to systems thinking, and speak to design thinking at the same time. How can these three things intersect around vision so we can cultivate vision statements that people, when they see that vision statement, does it align with our organization? Does it make sense? And are we achieving that vision? And this brings me to a challenge I want to make to both of you. I want to see if, as we go through our conversation today around developing vision statements using leadership, systems thinking, and design thinking, if we can come up with an allegory about doing that. And the allegory I'm going to pose that I want to build off of maybe is the allegory, Plato's allegory of the ship. Does anyone know that allegory?
I do not. I don't
don't
think I
either.
went to school.
So basically, the allegory is that you have a ship that's out at sea, and the owner of the ship doesn't know anything about navigating or being a sailor or anything like that. So the crew says, we need somebody to take over from this person and be the captain of the ship. So they go through an election process, and they find somebody who they elect somebody to be the captain of the ship. But that person also doesn't really know how to sail the ship, but they take the helm and they're steering the ship. And the one person who Plato says does know how to sail the ship and lead the ship in the appropriate direction is the person who hasn't gotten involved in the election process. They're standing to the side, looking up at the stars, and are able to see the stars in the distance and have a view of the horizon. And I think part of the metaphor, Plato wasn't into democracy, uh, but he was kind of elevating the idea of the philosopher king with that allegory. But times have changed. That allegory of leadership probably would not apply today, now that we're thinking about systems and design and so forth. So my challenge to us as we go through this conversation is, can we piece together a new allegory that speaks to vision and leadership, using design thinking and systems thinking as girders to scaffold these ideas around leadership and design thinking and vision and so forth? Do you accept that challenge for this episode?
I do.
Whoa!
That
I
was
told
super
Dan they were not
enthusiastic.
going to accept that challenge, and Dan, Mr. Ez, you blew
And
my mind.
and from reading his book, I would say he does. And so he has the new Dan Edds has I think does have the allegory, or at least a piece of it.
So let's
Absolutely.
begin with first principles, I guess. Or what is vision? When we talk about organizational vision, what is it, and why is it important?
I'll let you go first.
All right.
Sure.
Denzel.
So I think that's actually a great fundamental question in terms of trying to understand what is the purpose of it. Do you even need it? There's some companies, for example, like Dell, who doesn't even have a vision statement, never created one. They do fine. The other one, Apple has. When going back to Apple's vision statement is not public. It's not outward facing. It's an inward facing. So it's created for a different reason. And so I think the point of having a vision, if you're going to have one, it should give people kind of this sense of understanding, a sense of knowing kind of what the mission is, what the company is trying to do and accomplish. It should be big. It's usually lofty. It's something that, again, can start to guide other work that goes below it. And that's why there's usually that structure of a vision, mission, and whether people use it as objective or strategy, that starts to ladder down till finally it gets to the tactics of what you're doing. And at any point, kind of as the North Star, people can start to say, hey, if I really understand this and it's a real thing, a real vision that can help guide work, then that's basically what you're trying to do with a vision statement. And so it becomes these big sweeping long-term goals that is trying to guide it. And again, if done right, it's evergreen. And the idea of like going back to something like Google, where it's about organizing the world's information. This is one where we can continue to kind of say, well, are we on track? And here we are years later, it hasn't really changed as Google. And now there's LLMs and AI, et cetera. And it becomes like, yeah, this fits because it's organizing it through a different mechanism. It's organizing it for people through different vehicles, different surfaces, et cetera. So it's sort of everything kind of fit again. And you say, yep, that works. It validates what I'm doing. I think that's the first premise, is just saying like, do you need one? And if you do, then you have to start thinking through all these kind of logistical things of like, well, how is it going to motivate and drive and create the right type of things moving forward?
Yeah.
Mr. Edds, do you need one?
Do you need one? Well, obviously Dell has done pretty well without one. I would guess though that someplace in the Dell organization, there's something that says this is what we're about. They may not call it a vision statement. Maybe it's a mission statement. Someplace they have a statement that says this is what we do. This is what we're about. We do more than just connect parts of electronics. The thing that I would add into this conversation is value, because it's kind of where I spend a lot of my time. is what's the value that the organization is going to deliver to their customers or to their world? And you know, a lot of organizations say, well, the value, you know, on the technology side, and maybe Dan, you could comment on this or agree or disagree. You know, or a technology firm says, well, we want to deliver innovative products. Okay, that sounds cool. Sounds great. But is that really what the value that the customers want? I generally find that when you look at value from the standpoint of the customers, it's typically something that's very human. Um, you know, it's things like relationship, reliability. You know, I have an Apple phone. I don't buy the Apple phone because it has a lot of wow features on it. I could care less. I buy the Apple phone because it works. It's reliable. I don't have to worry about it. So somewhere in that vision, mission, you know, statement, concepts, ideas, I think there has to be a hard conversation about what's the real value, what's the core value that we want to deliver to our customers.
Nice.
Yep. So plus 100 on value, that ultimately you're trying to connect it. That gets back to my comment about when you're creating these things, and if you want them to be meaningful, they have to have some output in mind. Like, what are we trying to do?
Right.
And I would say when we say customer as well, a vision statement could be defining a customer in a very narrow way. Like, it could be, I want to make crazy money for my shareholders. I don't really care how I do it, but that's what I want to do. And that would be valid in some respects. Like, okay, everybody now knows their job is to just make money for the people who are investing in the company by
And
whatever
forget
means.
about ethics. Do it in any way possible,
It could
especially if
be
you're
all that,
managing my
exactly.
money.
I was just
Exactly.
going to say the New York Mafia fits perfectly.
They have that vision statement, and it's like, make money at any cost.
Yep.
And so, but the point is, with something as simple as that, everybody underneath that organization would get it.
Yep.
And it would be something that would click. It would start to understand. They could judge all their actions autonomously and come back and say, yep, I did exactly what you said. I got you your money at any cost.
Yeah. I think what you just said really resonates. It has to be a statement that has such clarity that anybody working in the organization can immediately say, oh, I get that. You know, not to be critical of Ford, but I guess I am. You know, Ford's statement to me just sounds way too it's cumbersome, it's wordy.
Yeah.
Too many different ways that if I'm an employee, let alone a potential customer, too many different ways I could take that. So I advocate for simplicity and clarity.
One thing I want to pick up on that I hear both of you saying in relation to this that I think is really important from a leadership point of view is that people can look at the vision statement autonomously and quickly understand, are we going in the right direction? And that kind of feeds into kind of leadership structures today in our more complex organizational environment. And we've been talking a lot about distributed leadership and, you know, how that's dispersed across an organization. So what I'm hearing you say is that having a really effective vision statement can help with creating an environment where there can be more distributed leadership and more autonomy amongst the staff to pursue the organization's goals. Is that correct?
I think you're spot on.
Well, thank you.
Well, yeah.
Well, but
you're spot on.
but the logic though is, if the vision statement is simple, that, you know, a 2-year-old can look at it and understand what it means, then that I think that the logic is that distributed leadership will work because every leader doesn't have to go out and then redefine that for themselves. Everybody in the organization knows what we're about, and we don't have to worry about, you know, Sam's understanding of vision and Julie's understanding of vision and Johnny's understanding of vision and Debbie's understanding of vision. everybody looks at it and goes, oh, that's what we do. Okay, we get that. And then you've got the ability to make something like distributed leadership work.
Interesting.
And so
What?
why is it optional? I mean,
Good
because
question.
Dell, you said that Dell had some success with it without
Is it
having
optional?
Without it. Or-
Is it optional though?
I think there's two things. One is when you talk about a kind of institutionalized vision statement. There's, I think, to Dan Ed's point, is there's a number of ways. There has to be something that guides the organization, and it didn't matter if it was a vision statement or it's just kind of this is how we do business or whatever it might be. And so no matter what, to be successful, you do need to have alignment. You have to have a common language, if that's what you want to call it. You have to have alignment on what we're trying to do. Good organizations is also quoting a lot of from Dan Ed's books and process is, it's you're trying to incorporate this in the DNA of everybody else, right? The entire organization. The organization functions. It's not relying on just a leader to do this. And so ultimately, that's where these. I'll go to something very esoteric. It's something like William Burroughs with language is a virus, right? Type of thing. That ultimately it and these words have power and these words have influence over people. And so ultimately, it can be a great driver if it actually is effective and works. And then, of course, if everybody then incorporates it and takes it on, then all of a sudden it becomes extremely powerful. So, so done well and right. It's not just a platitude. It's not just a checklist item for startups of like, hey, here's our vision statement. Shareholders give us money, et cetera. It should be something that says, yeah, this will literally, if everybody gets it, adopts it, has it in kind of institutionalized in their head, they will make these decisions correctly against what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a guiding North Star. It's something that you should be pointing at all the time. Basically, you're leveraging you've got your sextant and you're sort of guiding your ship by that vision.
What I'm hearing though is a different metaphor. I'm hearing like a virus and DNA. So I'm almost like, is it an inoculation? Are we gonna infuse, prick you, and then it's kind of coursing through your bloodstream?
Let me ask this question. So, one of the things that Dan and I have, or Tarker and I have been exploring, and Ed's your book that explicitly sort of goes down this path, is that we're seeing organizations leadership as a system. And then we're also talking about this other concept of, we've talked about this other concept, distributed leadership, which I think fits well in this notion of leadership as a system. And so without getting too much into the weeds of what that means as far as what operationally, my question would be, where does the vision come from? If the leadership is a system, if it's a distributed leadership, who owns the leadership? How does a vision statement come about? Where should it come from? Is it grassroots? Is it top down? Is it emergent? What is it? Marketing? Is it just simply marketing? Let's call marketing.
So let me, Dan. I'm going to lay the platform for you here, if you don't mind. So I think there is the process and the methodology of developing a vision statement. I also think there is, from a board of directors or a shareholders understanding, there's common vision within the governance of the organization. But from the standpoint of leadership, leadership systemically, no matter what that vision is, the leadership system has to be designed to produce that vision. So I'll give you two examples. One, I think, is a bad vision, and the other one is a really good vision for all the reasons we just talked about.
We like bad visions.
And I'm not even sure if it's not their vision statement, it's built in there someplace. So a hospital says, we're all about compassion. We want to deliver compassion. We want to be an organization that's known by our compassion. Sounds good Sounds wonderful. Who doesn't like compassion, especially in a healthcare organization? Problem is, it's unbelievably hard to measure. Everybody in the organization is going to have a different understanding of what compassion is. And some
Mhm.
people can be brutal and mean and still say, well, I'm being brutal and mean because I'm compassionate. On
Tough love.
tough love. On the other hand, if you say something like safety, we want to be the safest hospital on the planet. A, that's measurable. B, almost everybody is going to be able to, everybody in the organization is going to be able to look at safety and go, oh, okay, my patient's safety is my number one priority. Now then, Dan, if you want to design a system to produce safety, now I think you've got the basics to begin your design process. Am I correct?
That's this Dan, right?
Yeah, you, Dan. Dan,
Yeah.
Denzo.
Got it. Just wanted to make sure. Absolutely. So, so combination, I think there were some other questions that are baked into this, into what you just said. Who created it? How do you get it, et cetera. You're at the stage where absolutely you have something created that makes sense. I would go back to the original part of it to answer that. Is that where does it come from? It can come from wherever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the point is, you should be if you are the one in charge of developing it, you're the CEO, you're the founder, or whatever it might be. You should be reaching out to stakeholders. You should be trying to understand, like, okay, what does it mean? It should be reflective and introspective, as well as reflecting, like, does this make sense to the outside world? Will it actually be actionable? All of those things that go into it. Where it comes into leadership is leadership should be there to ultimately say, okay, I'm going to support it. It's not a mandate.
Right.
Mandate wouldn't work. It needs to be then supported, and that gets into the things that Dan Ed said. Ultimately, it becomes like, hey, if it's safety, that can be measured, and then you can figure out what it's wide enough and broad enough that you can interpret it in different ways, but it comes down to something that you'd be able to measure, and somebody could build a system underneath it that says, so okay, what do we call safety? We call safety no deaths. We want a zero death. We want no infections coming from us being the source. We want a reasonable volume, not a high volume, because we want to take care of our customers. And if it takes longer, it takes longer. Those become the things that you start to pull out from it, and you build systems around it. And then over time, you can even start changing them. Hey, we've achieved that goal. What's our next goal around safety? Are we done? So there's a lot of pieces that ultimately will come into that you build it. But I think that foundation and framework is a good example of saying, this is something that people can understand, and it can be interpreted in different ways, but they all theoretically should lead back to kind of like a central understanding and a central way to measure it. And it comes back to, I think there was a previous question of value. The value here is really to two people. Obviously, the shareholders, the company, et cetera. You get the benefit because if you have happy, safe customers, or patients in this case, then guess what? They're actually getting the benefit of being kept safe. They're getting the best care. They're getting all these other things. So that is a great example of like saying, how do I make money? By making customers happy, and then the money will come. I make them good products. I make them good things, and things that give them health or esteem or whatever it is that they're looking for. And it's very much an Apple model that where Steve came from, of saying, make great products. Don't worry about the money. The money will come. That's why they can charge the premium.
Yep.
We make
Right.
great products.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm getting from this is, value, of course, like you just spoke about, like what's the value to everybody involved, the customer, the organization, and then measurable, actionable things that can emerge out of the vision statement, which I think is really important too. Because I think a lot of this is about, again, direction and organizations feeling like they're moving in some direction, right? That they have a rudder that's guiding them somewhere. I feel like, and let me know, and I know, Dan Edds, you do probably a lot of talking to people and across different industries, and Dan Torres, you talk to people in the tech sector, I'm sure. So maybe you're seeing this as well. I definitely see it in higher education right now, post pandemic, or in the late stages of the pandemic, wherever we're at. that a lot of schools at least feel kind of aimless, like we've been in kind of a reactive mode the past few years. And so now that we're coming out of, the lockdowns and remote work and so forth, we're kind of starting to ask ourselves, well, where are we going? The world has changed. Our environment has changed. Do you feel like that's happening in other organizations as well?
Hmm.
I mean, there's been a lot of turmoil in tech, so I have to think it's happening there, but maybe not in the same way.
So the kind of turmoil, I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question as well. Is this in relationship to how we get things done, or how we're meeting our vision? Let's say
Yeah, like that everyone still understands the vision and the direction the organization's going in, right? Has it gotten fuzzier since the pandemic, or does it feel like the organizations you interact with that things are still pretty clear? I'll say in higher ed, I don't feel like, and I don't think I'm speaking just for my institution. I think I'm from colleagues across that I interact with across the state and across the country. I would say that, and what I read in our trade journals, I would say that a common theme for most higher ed institutions is kind of this existential, like, where are we at, and where are we going, kind of
And
feeling.
I'll add something to that real quick. Dan and I did a show 9 months ago about when Malcolm Gladwell said, "Get your butts back into the office." Right, caused a lot of hoopla. People were like saying, "Who's this jerk? He hasn't been in the office in 20 years, whatever." But his, shoot the messenger, but at least listen to the message maybe a little bit, because what he's suggesting is that, you're possibly losing some of that coming together so that you can kind of feel what that vision is. And if you don't come into the work and work together, that dissipates, and your company can become aimless. And that's what he's saying. I'm not saying it's true or not true, but I think there's a tangible statement, or someone seeing something and kind of writing an article about it. So anyway, it's just a little extra color to what Dan just was mentioning.
I don't mind taking a quick shot, and then I definitely will move aside for Dan. So one of the things, it's not, to me, this isn't related necessarily to vision, but this is an example of how is it being supported in terms of from a leadership standpoint. So a good example is on exactly this, what you said, that for a lot of companies, for actually higher education, et cetera, it became, am I just as productive, just as effective, learning just as well through Zoom and through whatever, through remote learning, et cetera? Do I actually have to go to a campus, et cetera? The benefit of those things, obviously, were you get people, like you said, coming together. You make those magical moments, the 5-minute conversation, the kind of nod to people. You build those things, and that's all still completely valid. But if the organization has progressed in a way of saying, "Hey, I let my staff move to wherever they're going to move. You're going to have a GVC, a video conference anyway." Or the way that they're organized in terms of where they can be in which buildings or what teams you're dealing with. And I know I have this where I deal cross-functional teams that are in buildings many miles away. So, I mean, just because we're in the same Mountain View or vicinity, we're still talking and communicating it through GVC. And it becomes one of these things of, what does it matter that you're sitting in your home, or if you're on a GVC, you're on a GVC. We don't have that magical moment. We don't have that point of being able to cross. And if the organization is structured and leadership is supporting that and saying, well, we looked at our previous quarters and everybody was just as productive, and we were just as profitable, if not more. And then, you don't really organize groups to say, I have to force everybody to be in the one place, same teams, and you allow teams to be somewhere else. Then it becomes like, okay, you have to relook at not the vision, but relook at maybe the tactical parts. Like, why would you say you have to come in when it's defeating a lot of purposes for people who said, I'm more productive, I'm not wasting 2 hours on the road, I'm basically able to start and connect. And incidentally, I'd have to connect with a third of the people or a fourth of the people through video conference. So why does it matter? So anyway, so I'll kind of leave it as, that's more of the, less of a vision, more of kind of the tactical changes, and for people to relook at it and say, can I still accomplish this vision through a new tactic, through a new set of things?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I don't think the vision, I would not expect the vision to change, although, in the world of higher ed, maybe the vision is going to be tweaked a little bit. because
Hmm.
COVID has created such a new world in education. But I would agree. By and large, the vision statement or the vision of the organization should not change, but the tactics of how to get there, they might
Hmm.
change. It's a little bit like core values. I know right in the middle of COVID, there's a lot of people talking about, well, have our values changed? And it's like,
Yeah.
no. Why would the values change if we have a core value of respect? Does COVID, hybrid working, in-person working, virtual working, does that is that going to impact the value of respect? It shouldn't. Now, it may impact how we execute that value, but it shouldn't impact the value of respect or belonging or engaging. It shouldn't impact the core value at all.
Though I can wear pajamas at home, but not at work.
Depends on the company, I
That's one
think.
of
But
my
yeah,
values.
I remember lots of pajamas back in the day, back in the .com days. I was like, really? This is happening now? Okay. Walked in with their dog and their PJs. Let me ask this. I wanted a little clarification. So it sounds like we weren't saying that vision isn't necessary perhaps for a company, but that the pedantic terminology of vision might not be needed, but something to guide the company to move forward is necessary. Are we agreeing to that, or is that not something we're agreeing to? Whatever that shape or form looks like, is that correct? Whether it's called a vision statement, a mission statement, or is
I
that correct?
I think it's certainly uh, I wouldn't say it's an absolute requirement, but I would say it sure helps.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
get to. What does a company look like? What 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 would what does a company probably look like if they don't have that thing? How does that manifest? I'm working as a company. What am I seeing now that if we don't have that guiding star? What are the
If
telltale signs?
I would say if you don't have one, you will have a dead company very quickly.
Hmm.
All right.
It'll you cannot be a successful company without having whatever. I think you said it right. Whether there's the kind of pedantic term of like in the structure of there's a vision, a mission, strategy or objective strategy, or having structure like that. But if you have no common goal or understanding or whatever statement it is, then don't count on having a company for very long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what I'm an employee. What am I seeing? What are the telltale signs? I mean, short of me not. Let's just say there might even be some terminology that sort of pretends to be a vision, but it's not being leveraged, and no one points to it. What am I seeing? What does that manifest in the company? As what are the signs of this thing happening as we're crashing?
Yeah. I would say so. I mean, part of it is, when looking at kind of where the analogy would lie, is obviously a lot of mom and pop organizations and small businesses and things don't create vision statements, but successful mom pop things know what they need to get done. They know, and then if they have an employee, 1, 2, 5, whatever it might be, successful ones, efficient ones, those ones know what to get done. And it may be very tactical, but they know at the end of the day what I need to do. If I'm making donuts, I know what I need to do. Make donuts. I know to make enough that sells for the day. I know that I should start counting on to be successful, not to make too many that I have to throw them away and I waste money. There's just a bunch of things that people can start making decisions. And there may be no vision statement, but it becomes like, what do? We make donuts to make money and make customers happy. Got it. So anything in between there of like, did I make the customer happy? Well, if I sat in the back room and didn't listen to them and made them wait for 5 minutes, probably I'm not, doesn't need a vision statement, but they're not misunderstanding what you need to get done. So for the most part, you can't have nothing. Or else you're just completely pincushion tactical. And then it's, like I said, it's not sustainable.
And it sounds like it's related to scale, right? As you scale up the size of an organization, the more important having some sort of vision, mission, and core values, they become more and more important.
It should be connected. I mean, this could be as small as partnerships like YouTube. If you don't agree or have a common language or agreement on how
Don't
you
even go
produce,
there, Torres.
for your show. You're what?
Just rip it off, rip off that wound.
You're in season 3 now, or season? So like, you
Season
guys
2.
obviously are doing.
We still don't have a
something.
vision.
But you have a way of a common understanding, a common language, and a common sense of what you want to accomplish each time. You may diverge, etc., but for the most part, even if it's just 2, and that's your scale, the point is there's something that drives it forward and
Right.
creating this product.
So it'll just look different based on the scale, right? The size of the group, or if it's a partnership versus a small family, mom and pop, to, a multinational corporation.
Yeah, I would just add one last part, and then I'll stop for a second. Is so about that scale, it's also right sizing things. I mean, what I do in terms of working with teams is you find what is the level of process and communication that you need to get something done. And for some organizations, you could have very low, lightweight things and produce great product. And I've worked in organizations where we had an understanding of what we needed to do, language, et cetera, that it almost became handshakes in many cases, and we get things done. And other ones, especially where you work with teams that may be located in other geographies, it becomes like, nope, you have to raise the level of process and communication so that you don't get anything wrong, because you're going to miss 12 hours each cycle, right? And it could be 24 hours before you come back. So the scale is there mainly to say, like, what's at stake? If I'm going to have 1,000 people, how do I communicate that easily to 1,000 people? Well, I probably should have something very simple. If it's basically 2 people in a donut shop, it becomes like, this is what we need to do. Got it, done. And you measure it by, did we get that done? Yes, no, let's move on.
No, I think I would add maybe 2 things. One, as an organization increases in size, just complexity just inherently gets more involved in the organization. And that's where I think a really effective and clear vision can help reduce some of the complexity that is just inherent as an organization grows. The other thing I think it's good to remember is that a really well-crafted vision statement doesn't ensure anything. If you never talk about it, you never measure your performance against it. It's a bunch of words on a wall that's worthless.
Right.
I'll give you an example. So several years ago, I was working with a local school district, and as part of the project, I was interviewing administrators. I was interviewing elementary school principals, middle school principals, high school principals, high school office managers, everybody. And I was talking to one of their, I think she was the deputy director of communications. And I said, so what's your mission statement? And she goes, oh, wait a minute. I got this. Wait a minute. I should really know this because I wrote it. Okay. Now, the fact of the
It's on a
matter,
sticky note.
well, the fact of the matter, it was emblazoned on all of their. You walk into the door of the main administrative office, and it's right on the front door. So, and it's on a lot of their documents. But when I asked a elementary school principal, I said, "What's your mission?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. I guess get kids ready for college."
Yeah, so I was coming from the higher ed perspective. We have these accreditation visits, and when the accreditors come to do the accreditation process, where they go and interview people around the campus about how the school's doing, the week before, the 2 weeks before, everyone's drilling everyone else about the mission statement. Making sure everyone can repeat it like that.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, go on.
Well, so if it's that hard to remember, something tells me, does it really have clarity? And if it's that hard to remember, are we ever talking about it outside of the week before the accreditation officers are going to walk in the door?
Well, I guess I think that gets back to the leadership aspect. I knew a president one time. I'll say his name, Mark Matsui, who's also the president of Portland Community Colleges for a number of years. He was gifted in that respect. He could infuse in any conversation the mission, the vision statement, and core values over and over and over again. And he'd do it all kinds of different methods, but he'd always go back to that and kind of, you knew it.
Yeah.
If you ever talk to Mark like 3 times a month, you would you would have that like kind of ingrained in your brain.
Well, so Dan, you may know more about this than I do, but it's my understanding that in the early days of Amazon, when they would have executive meetings, staff meetings, people sitting around a table, they would always leave one chair empty. And the logic was because they wanted to remind everybody in the meeting that whatever it was that they were talking about in that meeting had to have some value to the customer. And so they had an
Oh,
empty
interesting.
chair in their meetings as a reminder. That's the person that we're trying to serve here. And this conversation has to have value for them. So that empty chair was a reminder. This is what we're about.
I
like
thought that
that.
was for
Nice.
Elijah, but absolutely. So actually, I just wanted to talk about kind of the kind of like where leadership comes in, and I think this is more in fact, this is not more in, this is actually right back to Dan Edds, is Alcoa. I guess your example of being supported by the CEO saying, hey, I want like accident free, and it was like not free like a few, is free as zero. But how, I think I'd love to hear you talk about kind of like that instance of how that got done.
Yeah, well, that's where systemic leadership really comes into play. So so Alcoa gets a new CEO, and they already have really good safety numbers. But the new CEO says it's immoral for anybody to go to work and to be afraid of that they might be injured. And so just setting that vision that has such clarity. Now he could have championed and harped on and developed spreadsheets and sent spreadsheets out to every leader and manager and office manager or whatever, and after a while the spreadsheets would have said, yeah, it looks nice, and but when he gave his personal phone number to every employee and said, if your manager is not listening to you, call me. What he did in that very simple statement was basically set up a process that would drive the entire system. He created a rule. For a leader, you got to listen to your people. Now, how many of us working in organizations would love to have a rule that says our boss has to listen to us? And then he set up a routine. And we all know that systems operate on rules and routines. And the more the routine, the better the rule. And so you set up a rule and a routine that says, call me if your boss isn't listening to you. Well, what is the supervisor now motivated to do? Listen to their staff, because I don't want to get a phone call from the CEO of my organization saying, hey, you're not listening to your staff. How come? So, we just set up, we've now created the basic elements of a system to create incredible employee safety when those employees are fooling around with 2,000-degree aluminum flowing around.
Yeah. Denzo, are people dying a lot at Google these days? Is that an issue, or?
I can neither confirm nor deny that. And it's not part of our vision statement, so we don't measure.
You don't collect that data.
But
not yet.
But on the other hand, Google is now famous for psychological safety. And so, it's appropriate for Alcoa when they're, dealing with 2,000-degree aluminum to really put a lot of focus on physical safety of their employees. Now, Google is famous for creating a culture of psychological safety or at least acknowledging that psychological safety is a primary requisite for an effective team.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, and that again, not part of the vision, but this gets back to where these statements need to be. Words have meaning, words have power, especially if they are easily understood, actionable. People can figure out how to use them, and they can be measured against it. And so, part of that psychological safety fits into the rubric of, we have the 3 R's, and it's respect for the user, respect for the opportunity, and respect for each other.
There you go.
And so ultimately, it's just a very simple statement. And it's one of those ones that you can start to figure out as people, you can start to challenge other folks to say, hey, this doesn't fit into this. And nobody can kind of challenge you on it. It's like, it either becomes like, yep, it's pretty simple. Are we doing X, Y, or Z?
Yep.
And so, and it drives you as an individual or as a manager to basically say, if I really believe in this and continue to practice it with others, it's very easy to kind of measure even projects that you're working on. Like, hey, are we respecting the opportunity and the user in this process? And then the other part is like, is this team respecting each other? Like, we're going to ask them for resources. And so very, very simple, but very, very powerful.
That's also interestingly, sorry. I was just going to say, as an observation, it's also an interesting way of measuring culture, right? Because culture can be this abstract term, like what's culture? But when you put it in the way you just framed it, Torres, I could see like, okay, you could have metrics around your organizational culture.
Yeah, absolutely right, Dan. And Danzo, you're the 3 R's of Google reminds me that a hospital here in Seattle, it's consistently ranked as the safest hospital in the country. 2022, I think they received the highest rankings for patient satisfaction in the country, the #1 hospital organization for patient satisfaction in the country. And they don't call them the 3 R's, but it's exactly the same thing: respect for the work, respect for the worker, and respect for the patient. And that's simple, and you could just about measure anything you want to around those 3 R's.
Yeah.
So brass tacks here. At Sense and Signal, we like to have people kind of be able to walk away and leverage the information that they've heard on this show at times. And I'm not sure how successful we've been over the past 9 months, but let's see if we can up the ante here. I've heard a lot about, we've talked about creating vision statements and their value, and if they're not used, they're useless. They're just words. It's a checkbox vision statement. We'll call it the checkbox. We have to do the vision statement. Checkbox done. Right. And I can guarantee you that happens a lot. I've been in plenty of companies. We have a vision statement, but if you were to write a playbook on getting a vision statement up and assimilated, and we don't need to go into details, but there's 3 chapters in that playbook. What would those 3 chapters be? How would you get a vision statement going and adopted so that that your team, what are the tenets or the rules or the process? Just what does that
How do you design it? How do you design the vision statement?
Could I start out first, and then Dan, I'm gonna try to lay the platform for you again. So if we think about the organization systemically, that the organization is a system, and that leadership is a subsystem within that. Now all of a sudden I would propose that every organization has a leadership system. The only question is really one of design. Does the way leaders lead, is it everybody for themselves, or is there a designed way that we do leadership? And so, Danzo, that's where I think, and I really love this marriage. I would love to talk more about this marriage of the system and the design, because if a system is a system, then it can be designed. By definition, it can be designed. And so, Dan, I'd love to hear from you. How then do you go about designing a system? I kind of understand how you design a product, but if you had to design a system, how do you do that?
I approach it as almost all these things. Anything that Jodah knows some of my work as well. So it really starts with whether you have a product that is a service, it's a physical thing, and your service could be, I'm a law firm, it's whatever you might offer. And you're right, there are systems that would go into like, how am I going to go through this process of delivering on that? That becomes the tactic, et cetera. But getting back to the design, the kind of the starting point, just like anything else, you always start with like, what am I trying to accomplish?
Mhm.
What is the goal? What is the value? What
Mhm.
is it? Just trying to assemble all the right ingredients and pieces. Um, then you get into a process of, if you're really treating this as something serious, as like, this is, I'm building my product. Okay, well, my product is going to be built from this thing for the next 10 years. I'm going to do this. And I can always refine it and always kind of relook at it, and should be looking at it, but try to build something that actually has long lasting value to getting what it is that you want to get done. And so that's why it's kind of this process that shouldn't be it's not a motto. It's not just sort of some tagline. It really says, this is going to be something that's going to help guide what we're going to do. It's going to give us the kind of general framework of how we're going to be building and moving through the world. It should be bigger and loftier than probably what I could ever accomplish in 10 or 20 years. That's actually great if you have a vision that big, because you start to ladder down with like the mission. The mission gets to more of how you're going to do it. Then you get to the objectives. Oh, okay, now I have objectives that come out of that. Then you have a strategy, and eventually you have tactics. So but if they all ladder up very easily and it all makes sense, it all fits together, you have a great vision, and you hopefully will have a very long lasting business that's built on that. So the really comes down to, this is very much like building a product. You're asking the same questions of, where's value coming from? What am I trying to accomplish? How do I know I've accomplished this thing, or not? And or reiterate. And so ultimately there is a lot of, in those chapters, you get into the details of like, yeah, so what do you have to ask yourself? What are you trying, and again, who do you need to ask? Be testing it as well. This is very much of a product. Like, hey, here's my vision statement. What do you think? And if people are going, lean into the machinery of the fabric of whatever to make wow, it's like, yeah, then you kind of go, oh, probably not ready. You go back to the drawing board, right? So there's things like that you would do. So I think for me, it's the same way of tearing down and building a product, deconstructing everything to figure out, okay, how do these pieces come back together? And then, of course, the final part is, if I had more time, it would be shorter. So you need to put the work into making a very succinct, tight one. A really good one is just clear with a few set of words. It's not a paragraph and not convoluted, and doesn't cover every case. In fact, it probably leaves room for things you never even thought about, like
Like
Amazon.
AI and
Like
Google, right?
exactly, that's so I was going to say. So you go back and say Amazon was about books and about, like, it was very very narrow. But if they slowly, if they've changed their vision to kind of keep adding in online and this and that, you kind of also want to make sure that it accomplishes things like the fact that they have data centers, and they have basically that you can get web services, to all the way to AI. What are they going to do with that? How does that transform their business? It comes to even other different ways of delivery. I'm not even delivering a physical good anymore. I'm delivering subscriptions and different. So the point being, if you had a really tight, succinct one that kind of said, how do I delight users in a variety of forms or ways? There's some way to construct this that would have been like, yep, we're now online. Yep, we're AI. Yep, we're VR. Yep, it still works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know,
So, oh, go on, Dan. Sorry.
well, you're reminding me, and as you're talking, Dan, I'm thinking, whew, I did it right. Um, so the first organization, hospital, actually, I was working with around this whole idea of, building a system of leadership. Um, I had no idea what I was talking about at the time, and the CEO said, "I want to build he called it a model of leadership, a model that would say, if you're a leader in this organization, here's how you do it." And they said, "Can you do that?" And of course, I said, "Sure." I walked out the door and I said, "Now, how in the heck am I going to do that?" But I told him, I said, yeah, I could do that. Um, but I said, the first thing we have to do is figure out, what do you want that leadership system to produce? And so they already had I think, a very nice vision statement, which was exceptional care, to deliver exceptional care to their community. And each
Mhm.
one of those words was very spelled out: exceptional care, community, that was well defined. And so then it was really, what we did was set up the system, the leadership system, to produce exceptional care in their community. And so the first thing we had to do was we had to figure out, okay, what is the leadership system supposed to produce? What's the output of that leadership system? Because every system produces something. There's an end product to the system. And so it took about 3 hours, and finally we said, or they said, the leadership system has to produce empowered employees. It has to produce empowered patients, and it has to produce an empowered community. And when we got that done, it was like, okay, now we can take the next step. So then it was a step of, okay, what are the behaviors that we need to design that every leader in the organization is going to personally follow? And it was things like, listening. I mean, real tactical stuff, learning to listen, and involvement in the community. And so one of the things that they did, they began to measure their management and the time they volunteered in the community, because that was so core to what they were about. And they even set up sort of a competition where the management ranks they were keeping track of their volunteer hours, and then everybody else were keeping track of their volunteer hours. And so they sort of developed this internal competition, which is really pretty cool. And and lo and behold, in most states, there is something called the social determinants of health, I think it's called. And over the years, you could track their performance in community health, total community health. They started out way high in terms of not delivering a whole lot of community health. Over the years, that's just come down and down and down, down meaning better community health. And so, it was a phenomenal way of looking at leadership. And anybody who walked into that organization could be coached and trained and taught to the requirements of that system.
Wow. I love that. I love how the way you just described that, Dan, Edds, is how things emerge from the vision, right? You have that vision statement, and then from that, the systems are built out from that vision, including how we want the leadership system to function within the organization and what outputs it produces. I love that image.
I just wanted to add one more comment to the Dan Edds thing. First off, definitely get his book, and because you missed one part, Dan, in there, is that they also kind of extended that vision statement, or pieces that came out of it. Was not only we're going to deliver exceptional health to them, we're going to deliver exceptional health with them.
Right.
And that became, again, part of this very measurable component where it said, oh, we have to do this with the community, our patients, et cetera. And so it was just one of these ones that was just a natural extension. But ultimately, it becomes very easy to understand, and it became something that you could easily adopt as well. So, you definitely had it right.
Thank you.
So I guess, do we have an allegory? At the beginning of the episode, I asked you if we have an allegory if we could come up with an allegory. And if we can't, we can't. It was a failed experiment, but I just want to open that question up if anyone could offer an allegory about how these things intersect and how we should be thinking about leadership in the 21st century.
I thought there was
it should involve ships.
Yeah, exactly. Well, going back to your ship example, I will have to go read up on it. So I apologize for that. But I think ultimately, in terms of, I'm not sure if where in the allegory is about how do you select the leader, how do you select the person, whatever. The person that they ended up selecting, it wasn't just a matter of, I know ships, I know this. It's like I kind of understood this idea of the vision of the stars, of what they do and how they guide. The rest of it probably came down from that leader saying, here's where we need to go. I'll help guide this. I don't know how to run the ship to get it to go that way. So I'm going to go start relying on all of you to start to do your job. Who needs to do the sails? Who needs to basically do the rudder and steering and everything else? But I do know this, and we all have the same vision. I will tell you by looking at the stars where we need to go. So that leader could keep communicating something very simple. Go this way. I'll tell you how we get there. Everybody else, you need to do your job to support that vision and that kind of direction. And so in that case, the leader wasn't about, I know exactly how to do a ship, I run a ship, I know exactly how to do all these things. Yeah, sometimes you want a leader that does understand this, but sometimes there are times where you have to flip it around of, I don't understand. And
Yeah.
I bring this up in just one final one, back to some great reference material. Dan's book talks about a military leader who had to do exactly that, and about ships, about submarines, I think it was, that ultimately it was about changing. Like, I've never run on this submarine, so I'm a leader, but I can't lead in the way I did with the one I had so much experience with. So the allegory, I think, here is more around the leader is around supporting and helping build this vision, and then making sure that it's supported with everybody else, and everybody else has to have that vision in them as well. So therefore, it behooves you to make sure these words have power, these words are supported, these words are constantly talked about, right? So people just naturally understand what it is.
So the allegory is now a submarine. That's the difference?
Exactly. It went from ship to submarine.
No submarine jokes today.
Well, I'll one of the really interesting conversations, and you'll recognize this one, was with a retired 4-star general, and I'm at a lunch meeting and he's the keynote speaker at this lunch, and he starts talking about decentralizing leadership, and I'm thinking, this is the strangest thing I've ever heard. A 4-star general talking about decentralizing leadership.
Right.
I didn't think 4-star generals did that. So,
Right.
and so, at the Q&A part, I have to go, excuse me, sir. How does the Army do that? And, a very command type voice that says, training, which is exactly right. And he went on to say, he was talking about the first Gulf War. He was the commander of 26,000 troops and enough firepower that he could wage war on a lot of small countries. And he said, I had 7 direct reports, and he said it was the easiest thing I've ever done. And his job was to pull off one of the most logistically complex military maneuvers since World War II. But he said it was simple because everybody was so well trained. And then when I was interviewing him, I was asking about that again, and he said, yeah, he said 3 weeks before, kicking off this maneuver, my chief of staff, which would be his number 2 assistant, number 1 assistant, I guess, gets promoted and moved to a different command. And he told me, he says, I called the general of the Army. He said, can't you wait a few weeks? He says, no. He said his replacement came in a week later, so he had 2 weeks to finish the planning for this incredibly complex maneuver. And he said, I didn't know him. I had never met him before, but there was no time for on-the-job training, no time for learning to know each other and all the pleasantries of a new kid coming into the organization. But he said, I trusted his training. And so because of that, there was 0 loss in performance, and we were incredibly successful.
I just wanted to add one, maybe taking it to an allegory then. Is the change would be in the adage or story or whatever has been around for a long time. There's a story of somebody comes up to somebody laying bricks, and it's medieval times, and says to the person, "Oh, so what are you building, or what are you doing?" And one's either, I'm laying bricks. Another person says, I'm building a cathedral to God. And ultimately it becomes that, but
That's
this
right.
could be back into that system kind of approach, that it came down to probably if every carpenter, if every bricklayer, if every person who's doing anything, painting, glass work, whatever it might be on that cathedral, if they all understood their job, but the whole point was they were building a cathedral to God.
Yeah.
And so ultimately that's the vision that somebody would be able to have. And everybody just knew exactly what they were doing. They knew kind of the purpose, and they knew their role in it. They maybe, and whether or not they understood everybody else's, everybody's
and it
working.
spanned generations, right? With those cathedrals, I mean, those bricklayers, those masons it was a family affair. I mean, your father would start maybe laying the first brick, and the grandkid would lay the last brick.
You know,
You know,
one of Dan's favorites, one of Dan Tarker's favorite people, Simon Sinek, actually has a little story where he talks about that on that exact same notion, right? Where he says you should be able to interview the janitor at a NASA facility,
mhm,
and that person can honestly say, "I'm sending people to the moon."
right.
You know, that's his. That's that's kind of his little thing he mentions on that.
You know, I
Yeah. I don't.
I love that. You know, am I laying a brick or am I building a cathedral to to
Yeah, I do too.
praise and worship the divine? I mean, it's
It
totally
changes
different.
Another
Changes
another
everything.
piece I like about that allegory that Torres provided us about the bricklaying too, and thinking about the span of time it took to build those cathedrals, getting back to vision and how the resilience of the vision statement, right?
Hmm.
And how you want to write it in a flexible way so it can adapt over time. Like Google's, we're going to help manage people's information or manage information. It can adapt to emergent things like AI, so it doesn't need to change. And that's another theme that I heard through this conversation, like designing your vision statement so they can be resilient to change and adaptable to the changing environment, because we're living in an age of acceleration where things are changing very rapidly.
Tarker, I heard something different. What I took away
Okay.
with every organization should try to be a religion.
Cults, little
Or
cults.
cult. Or cult, yes, I think. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Seems like God is the ultimate vision that we can all run with. Before we are coming close to close, I will let this group decide if we think we are at that. But I do want to get this. Who knows what Amazon's vision statement is right now?
I can tell you, it is be Earth's most. I have it written down. So, be Earth's most customer-centric company, where customers can find and discover anything they might want to buy online, and endeavor to offer its customers the lowest possible prices.
Oh, okay.
That is
That's
not
very specific.
Yeah.
exactly. That was sort of what I was alluding to. Of like, it's not really. However, they're getting their job done. This was not through this.
It was through Bezos. Bezos was the vision statement. I am the boss.
That's right. Make me the richest man in the world.
Make me the richest man in the world. Right,
So I can
exactly.
build
Now
some
that
rockets.
that is a good vision statement. Very simple and easy to understand.
That's right. Well, Tarker, do we think
Well-
it's 10 minutes? You have another question? Go ahead. Yeah.
No, it wasn't a question. I
Last
just feel like,
thoughts in here, and we'll close things out. I
I
think.
just want to end with, I think I've lost you 3 sponsors today, and I apologize. So various.
Oh,
companies.
that's fine. We lose sponsors every episode.
Yeah.
You know, but we get more people because we have millions of listeners. So.
yeah, it's crazy. Intense.
But no, it's been a delight talking to you both. I'm really glad we got you both together, because
too.
I think this intersection of design thinking and systems thinking and leadership is really important to think about as we,
Agreed.
continue to have discussions about how to keep our organizations healthy and moving forward and thriving in an increasingly complex world. So I definitely want to thank both of you for being on the show. And how can people find you if they want to contact you or ask you a question or buy your book? How can they do that?
Or come to your house, knock on your door, have dinner.
Well, for me,
Don't
it's
do
just
that.
danieledds.com. It's pretty simple.
And me, no book or whatever, but on LinkedIn is Dan J. Torres, and that's me.
That's you.
Awesome.
That's awesome, guys.
Well,
hey, I
Droves
love you
of
guys.
people
You
will be
rock.
reaching out to you after this episode posts, so I just want to prepare you for that.
We'll be knocking on your doors. All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Gentlemen, see you next week.